Broadcasting live from somewhere in the Shadow Realm, this is YuGiOh Duel Links Talk. Here's your host, Doug Dimmadoo.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of YuGiOh Duel Links Talk. Today, we're taking a look at the newest box set that was just released in YuGiOh Duel Links on September 21st, Generation Next. This box set is a 200-pack box set, which should have quite a few really good cards that you're able to get a hold of. Again, this is something that you're going to want to spend a lot of gems on if you're wanting to get full sets of certain cards. But today, what I want to look at specifically is the ultra rares that you're able to obtain through this box set. So I'm going to start going through the ultra rares here, and there are some good ones. The first one here is Evil Dragon Ananta, and it is a level 8 reptile, attack of question mark, defensive question mark. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card cannot be special summoned except by removing from play all reptile type monsters from your side of the field and graveyard. This card's attack and defense are each equal to the number of monsters you removed times 600. During each of your end phases, destroy one card on the field. Now, this is bad news, this ending effect, if this is the only card left on the field. I'm assuming what this effect does is then you have to destroy Evil Dragon Ananta on its own. So this is the kind of card that will come in handy later on in a duel when your opponent has a lot of spell traps and monsters on their side of the field. If they're kind of flooding the field with stuff, Evil Dragon Ananta is a better card for that, because by that point in the game you should have a few reptiles on the field, you should have a few reptiles in the graveyard if that's the kind of deck that you're running, and it should make this card pretty powerful. So I'm just thinking in terms of just having 5 total reptile monsters on the field and in the graveyard, and then using Evil Dragon Ananta to come on out. You're talking about a 3,000 attack and 3,000 defense monster, if my math is correct. So this card can be really powerful, and it's got a lot of potential. But yeah, for an ultra rare, it just depends on if that's the kind of deck that you're running. And I'd be curious to see, moving forward, what kind of reptile decks we're going to be seeing specifically utilizing this card. So next is one of the big cards in the box set, Horus the Black Flame Dragon, level 8. It's a level 8 dragon, 3,000 attack, 1,800 defense, but this card cannot be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned by Horus the Black Flame Dragon, level 6, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. During either player's turn when a spell card is activated, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. You must control this face-up card to activate and resolve this effect. So this is kind of reminds me of the Silent Magician level 8, but it seems like in general now, this will be able to negate and destroy any spell cards that are being used, not just ones that could potentially target it. So this is really good, and now we may end up seeing more of a shift between Silent Magician, between Horus the Black Flame Dragon level 8, and between a few others like Dark Paladin, that really focus on the negation of spell cards and the destruction of spell cards, where we may start seeing a shift back into a usage of trap cards. So this is when stuff like Mashizer may be seeing a little bit more play moving forward, the more of these kind of decks that we see with Horus the Black Flame Dragon level 8, and same thing with Silent Magician level 8, is no more, I don't think you're going to see as much Super Rush Headlong or Enemy Controller if these decks become meta and these decks become prominent. You may want to see an adjustment in strategy, maybe focusing more on effect monsters rather than spells. So I don't know, it just depends, and this could be a total bust, but from what I'm seeing so far, it's really done a good job against a few of the decks that I've used when I've come across a Horus the Black Flame Dragon level 8 deck. So so far so good for that. It seems pretty promising. Next ultra rare we have here is Magical Something. It's a level 4 spellcaster, 1,800 attack, 1,300 defense. Each time a spell card is activated, place one spell counter on this card when that spell card resolves. This card's level is increased by the number of spell counters on this card. You can remove 3 spell counters from this card, then target one quick play spell card in your graveyard and set that card to your spell and trap zone. You can only use this effect of Magical Something once per turn. So if you do run a lot of quick play spells in your deck, Magical Something is probably a must-have, because if you're going to be activating a lot of spell cards, you're going to get those spell counters going pretty quick onto this card. And then, of course, this is just a great fit for any generic spell counter deck. I don't know, this is just a really good ultra rare for that. And again, having another spellcaster with an 1800 attack is never a bad thing. So yeah, that's a good one. Next ultra rare we have is Card Guard. It is a level 4 fiend, 1600 attack, 500 defense. If this card is normal or special summon, place 1 guard counter on it. This card gains 300 attack for each guard counter on it. Once per turn, you can target one other face-up card you control, remove 1 guard counter from this card, and if you do, place 1 guard counter on that target. If that card would ever be destroyed, remove 1 guard counter from it instead. Boy, this card is really good. If you're able to get more counters onto this card as well, you're able to protect more monsters on your field. But just as full-on protection and having your opponent need to destroy a monster more than once, this works out really good. If you have a special summoned strong monster on the field that maybe your opponent may be trying to super rush headlong it or Mashizer that card, well, you're giving it some protection by placing a counter on top of it, where really it makes your opponent have to reevaluate the strategy if this card becomes used a lot. How to kind of get around this card would be to focus on cards that banish opponent's monsters, and we don't have too many of them right now, but also to the monsters that send opponent monsters back to their hand, because this doesn't protect that from happening. It just protects the other monster from being destroyed. So always keep those in mind when you're seeing these card effects. Not saying that Card Guard is not a good card. I think it's a really, really good card right now, and probably one of the better cards if you're trying to protect your monsters on the field. This is a must-have. And again, it starts out with a 1900 attack because of the counter. Once you remove it, it goes back down to 1600 attack. So overall, another excellent ultra rare. This next one is one of my favorites in the TCG as well, and I think I'm going to be seeing a lot of play from this if I'm able to get at least a copy of this or multiple copies, and that's King of the Swamp. Level 3 Aqua, 500 attack, 1100 defense. Don't worry about the attack and defense stat lines. Not that important because this effect is what makes this card one of the best for fusion decks. This card can be used as a substitute for any one fusion material whose name is specifically listed on the fusion monster card, but the other fusion materials must be correct. You can discard this card to the graveyard and add 1 polymerization from your deck to your hand. So this has multiple uses. If you are running a fusion deck and you don't have polymerization in your hand, but you got multiple fusion materials, just activate King of the Swamp's effect, send the card to the graveyard, and boom, you get a polymerization in your hand and you're ready for your fusion play. Or you just use this card as a fusion material. So that's why, King of the Swamp is hands down one of the best. I still use it to this day if I'm running a fusion deck in the TCG, just because of its dynamic ability. And in a 20-card deck, if you're able to get multiple copies of this card, which I know is going to require a lot of gems, my goodness, you're in good shape to get a fusion play going almost immediately when you start each of your duels. If you run a 3-copy of King of the Swamp, which would be just insane, and an insane amount of gems. But anyway, moving forward, we have a really powerful fusion monster. It is 5-headed dragon. It's a level 12 dragon fusion monster, 5,000 attack, 5,000 defense. Its fusion requirements are 5 dragon-type monsters. It must first be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways, and cannot be destroyed by battle with a dark, earth, water, fire, or wind monster. So this is just an absolute beast, but the only downfall is that given the speed duel format within Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, and only ending up with 4 cards to start, and then 5 cards if you're going second, this card's going to be pretty difficult to summon unless you're kind of really getting things moving. And keep in mind, we don't have Dragon's Mirror yet, which I think is going to be a game changer for a 5-headed dragon, because you're able to banish cards from your graveyard to use as fusion material for a 5-headed dragon. So, but for now, we don't have Dragon's Mirror. We just have polymerization and fusion gate and all those cards. So you're going to need 5 dragons, either in the field and in your hand, one way or another, to make 5-headed dragon happen. May not be that common of a card right now, but potentially, coming across that kind of deck could be nothing but trouble. Next, you got Arcana Knight Joker. It is a level 9 warrior fusion monster, 3,800 attack, 2,500 defense, requires a Queen's Knight, Jack's Knight, and King's Knight. A fusion summon of this card can only be done with the above fusion materials once per turn during either player's turn when a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated that targets this face-up card on the field. You can discard the same type of card, a monster, spell, or trap, and negate the effect. So this effect reminds me of an Ultimate Providence, but also The fact that it has a 3,800 attack and 2,500 defense is just nothing to sneeze at, and all around extremely powerful. So another good fusion monster out of this deck. Can't complain there. Next, you got a Book of Teao. It is a spell card where you flip one face-down monster on the field into face-up attack position. So if you want your opponent to activate their flip effect before you possibly summon any monsters on the field the next turn, or something that you don't want necessarily affected, then this is a great book. I mean, it's a great spell card to use. And next one you have is Defusion. It's a quick play spell card where you target one fusion monster on the field and return that target to the extra deck. Then, if all the fusion materials that were used for its fusion summon are in your graveyard, you can special summon all of them. So, this is just another good way. If you got some powerful monsters that are fusion material, and they're both sitting in your graveyard, you could actually flood the field pretty quickly in comparison. If you're running, I don't know, it just depends on the type of deck you're running. So say if you're running one of those Buster Blader decks, and you have a Buster Blader, you send it to the graveyard, and you also send Powerful Dragon to the graveyard, you're able to get those two monsters back out on the field, and this could potentially be a pretty good play overall. So Defusion is a good card if it's used correctly. And the last ultra rare card that we have, and one of the more sought after ultra rares in this set, is Floodgate Trap Hole. When your opponent summons a monster or monsters, change that monster or monsters to face down defense position. Monsters changed to face down defense position by this effect cannot change their battle positions. So yeah, they're kind of stuck there. It's just a really good play that is going to be seeing just a lot of usage when people start getting this ultra rare. So overall, as far as the ultra rares go, this is probably one of the better sets of ultra rares that I've seen in a box set so far. This is absolutely worth spending the gems, if you have that kind of gems, to spend on a 200 pack box. Ideally, if I had enough for 600 600 packs worth of gems, I would be trying to get 3 copies of all these ultra rares, because I believe that they're all really, really good and have a lot of potential, especially when new sets come out later on. Now, I'm not in that position to spend those kinds of gems. I don't necessarily have all that much, but in the meantime, it's nice to think that people who do have the resources can really build some insane decks just based off of the ultra rares. But in an upcoming episode, we'll get into the super rares, and potentially then we'll get into the rares and the commons. So there's just a few things to look out for moving forward, and we'll touch upon those in the future. So if there's anything that you would like to add, or if there's anything else that you want me to discuss on an upcoming podcast, reach out to me on Twitter at YuGiOh Deck Talk. It's all one word, at YuGiOh Deck Talk, and I'd love to hear from you. But anyway, that's it for today's episode. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.